A long time ago, King Ahasuerus conquered 127 nations, becoming the ruler of the entire world. In his quest for unlimited power, he moved the capital of the Persian Empire to Shushan. To celebrate his rise to power, he made a grand banquet that lasted an incredible 187 days to show off his immense wealth. Meanwhile, Queen Vashti held a separate feast for women. The king, drunk with wine and power, bragged that Vashti was the most beautiful woman in the kingdom and commanded she appear before him to publicly display her beauty, thereby reducing her to nothing more than an object on display. But Vashti refused, sending King Ahasuerus into a mad rage. Perplexed, the king summoned his advisors. The evil Haman proposed banishing Vashti, and to prevent women in the kingdom from emulating Vashti's rebellion, a decree would be made that wives are the property of their husbands and must obey them. The king agreed, and messengers were sent to announce the decree. Sometime after, the king regretted his decision. Sensing his discomfort, his advisors suggested gathering all the women in his kingdom to search for a new queen. The king agreed. In the capital city of Shushan lived a Jew named Mordecai. He was a descendant of the Jews exiled from Israel. He adopted his cousin Esther after her parents passed and cared for her as his own. Esther was among those taken in the search for a new queen, where she was prepared to meet the king. Unwilling to partake, she hid her background and Jewish identity, hoping the king would reject her for being of lesser lineage. Mordecai, out of concern for Esther, would visit her every day. After each girl underwent a 12-month beautification process, they were given anything they requested in their desperate attempts to impress the king. When Esther's turn came, she chose to take nothing, but the king loved her more than anyone else and set a crown on her head, making her queen, and made a banquet to celebrate. Curious about her background, he asked many times about her origins, but Esther refused to tell him. Mordecai was given a position at the palace gate, where he overheard two servants plotting to assassinate the king. He told Esther, who told the king. The servants were executed, and the event was recorded in the royal chronicles. The king mistakenly credited Haman for saving his life and promoted him above all his other ministers, and decreed that everyone must bow down to him. But Mordecai refused, as bowing is an act of idolatry, forbidden in the Jewish faith. Haman was infuriated by this and devised a plan to annihilate all the Jews. He made a lottery to pick the date of destruction, which fell out on Purim. He told Ahasuerus his plan, using bribery and deceit to persuade him. The king agreed and gave Haman his signet ring, which he used to send out letters in the name of the king, authorizing everyone in the land to eradicate the Jews, men, women, and children. And Haman and the king made a feast to celebrate. When Mordecai learned of Haman's decree, he tore his garments, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went to the palace gate crying bitterly. Seeing this, Esther sent a servant to give him clothes, but Mordecai refused. He gave the servant Haman's decree and asked that Esther intercede with the king. Esther decided to go before the king without being summoned, which was a crime punishable by death. Ahasuerus, overcome with affection for Esther, extended the scepter, sparing her life. Esther requested that the king and Haman come to a feast. At the feast, the king asked, "What is your wish?" Esther requested that they come to another feast tomorrow. Haman went home proud to have been invited to such an exclusive event. But when he passed Mordecai, who refused to bow, he became filled with rage. He told his family of his hatred for Mordecai. They suggested he publicly hang Mordecai. The proposal pleased Haman, and he built a gallows. That night, the king couldn't sleep, so he ordered the royal chronicles to be read, where he discovered that it wasn't Haman, but Mordecai who saved his life. At that moment, Haman entered. So the king asked him, "What shall be done to the man who the king wishes to honor?" Haman, assuming the king wanted to honor him, answered, "He should be dressed in royal garments and paraded on a horse, while they announce before him, 'Such shall be done to the man who the king wishes to honor.'" The king ordered, "Quick, go do everything you said to Mordecai the Jew." So Haman paraded Mordecai through Shushan, while proclaiming before him, "Such shall be done to the man who the king wishes to honor." Haman was then brought to Esther's feast. The king asked Esther, "What is your wish?" Esther responded, "My wish is to spare my life and my people, for we have been sold for destruction." "Who would dare do this?" yelled the king. Esther replied, "The evil Haman." Haman, overcome with fear, fell before Esther, begging for his life. Then one of the servants said, "What's more, Haman built a gallows to hang Mordecai, the man who saved the king." The king, furious, ordered that Haman be hanged on the gallows built for Mordecai. King Ahasuerus bestowed Haman's royal position on Mordecai and gave him his signet ring. the king still didn't address the fate of the Jewish people. So Esther fell before Ahasuerus, pleading that he save her people. The king extended the scepter, indicating for Esther to rise and speak. Esther asked that the Jews be allowed to defend themselves from their enemies. Ahasuerus agreed, so Mordecai sent out letters in the name of the king, authorizing the Jews to take revenge on their enemies. And Mordecai left the palace, wearing a crown and royal robes, and the city of Shushan rejoiced on the day of Haman's decree, with the help of Mordecai and the king's army. Instead of the Jews being annihilated by their enemies, the Jews destroyed their enemies, killing over 75,000, including the 10 sons of Haman, who were hanged on the gallows. And that day was transformed from sadness to joy, commemorated by feasting, exchanging gifts, and giving to the poor, celebrated forever as the holiday of Purim. Even to this day, Queen Esther and Mordecai wrote the story in the Megillah, and Esther convinced the sages to include the Megillah in Tanakh, otherwise known as the Bible. Mordecai grew even more powerful, becoming second to the king. He was loved by everyone and interceded for the good of all his people.